In this week's Torah portion, B'halotcha, Moses hits a breaking point after the people take to kvetching once again, weeping and crying, saying, if only there was meat to eat, and thinking about all the good things that they could have had in Egypt. Overwhelmed, Moses turns to God and says, Lo uchal anochi. I can't do this. In fact, he goes on to say that he would rather God kill him than lead this people. Now, Moses does often have a flair for the dramatic. And in this case, in his very extreme response, we can hear and feel the pain and frustration in his plea. I imagine that in these three words, Lo uchal anochi, Moses is communicating, I am exhausted. I have nothing left to give. I cannot seem to find the strength to face the challenge in front of me. I feel so alone. When I read the Parsha this week, Moses's Lo uchal anochi penetrated my soul and has not left my mind since. This is because I can so directly relate to those moments when I have felt like Moses did, like it's all too much and it's just too hard to find the light. And I don't think this is about Moses as a leader. I think this is about Moses as a human being. I think there is not a single person in the world who has not had a moment or two in which we can relate to Moses's feelings of aloneness or overwhelm or fear. How can we not, given that we have just lived through 27 months of a global pandemic? A pandemic that for some of us we are learning to live with, but for others still dominates our minds and limits our activities. A time in which there were long stretches where we may not have seen another human outside of the people we live with. A time in which many of us felt loneliness and isolation. How can we not understand or relate to Moses's plea when we're living in a moment when the basic human rights for self-control and autonomy of half the world's population are being threatened? When another massacre of children happens and our elected officials are not willing to do anything? How can we not feel a bit like Moses in moments of personal challenge in a society that does not make space for grief, illness, or struggle? Now that we recognize that we've all been there at some point in our lives, let's go back to the Torah portion to see its response. After Moses cries, Lo uchal anochi, I cannot do this, it is very important to note that God does not take Moses aside and give him a pep talk, reminding him that he has the inner strength for the road ahead. God doesn't say to Moses, hey, I picked you at the burning bush for a reason, now get it together. No. Instead, God instructs Moses to gather 70 elders to share the burden with. The Torah, through the voice of God, is saying, Moses, you're right. You can't do this. You can't do this alone. You need others to support you, to care for you, and to lighten the burden for you. In other words, it takes a village to get to the promised land. I have always believed and continue to believe in the transformative power of community. And not just any community, but spiritual community in which people throw their lots in with each other and make a decision to care for others outside of their immediate circle and to commit to the greater good. Spiritual community offers connection and a lifeline in a time of extraordinary isolation. The isolation that has been increasing before the pandemic and now is a pandemic itself. An April 2021 study showed that 67% of Americans feel more alone than they ever have. Spiritual community offers hope in a time of growing fear and uncertainty about the future. One that offers people the opportunity to take risks and find opportunities for action that help them move from anxiety to action. Spiritual community offers people a chance to feel like they are truly seen and that they belong. And in a world that is so often judgmental and that marginalizes so many, this opportunity and experience of belonging is nothing short of life-changing. Spiritual community in a Jewish context offers opportunity for self-expression, personal growth in multiple ways, and through ways like prayer and meditation, community building, social action, we can find that sense of shleimut, wholeness, that is at the heart and center of Mordecai Kaplan's thinking. SAJ is this kind of spiritual community. I have spent the last week or so collecting anecdotes from community members, those who have been around for decades and those maybe just a few months. And I have chosen, for the sake of time, to share just a few. And I know if we probe more, we will find riches. So I'm going to share these direct quotes from SAJ members. From a long-term member, the world may be raging, but when I step into SAJ, time ceases. I breathe and settle into my spiritual center, which is touched by song and prayer and the wisdom of Reconstructionist thought. From a parent of young children under 5, SAJ has been a lifeline for our family during the pandemic, providing support, friendship, growth, and moments of great joy for us and our children. From a mom of a teen, as a result of the civil rights trip to the South, my teen's life is forever changed for the better. From a recent convert, SAJ has nurtured me spiritually through my conversion process, from attending shul on Zoom during the depths of COVID to being present in the synagogue for my ceremony. The community supported me in the time of my greatest growth. SAJ has been a lifeline to my Jewishness. From an SAJ teen, I have never felt more at home than I do at SAJ. It feels like family to me. From a member of the adult Bar Mitzvah cohort, one of 17 students this year, SAJ is a place that allows me to experience and explore divinity, connect, and feel belonging. I previously thought I had to compromise some aspect of myself to integrate into the Jewish community. Since being at SAJ, I feel more confident in being Jewish anywhere I go. From a new member, as my day job went remote throughout the pandemic, I often feel very isolated. Being able to start my day with SAJ wake up twice a week has been an essential point of connection, giving rhythm to my week that culminates with seeing each other in person on Shabbat. I'm the parent of a college-age student. SAJ has created a true community for our family and in a world and a city where true community is rare and needed. If it takes a village to raise a child, SAJ is our village. SAJ has helped us raise our child with a sense of meaning, values, and fun. It has given us as adults friendship and a spiritual home. I cannot imagine my life without it. And from a 13-year-old recent Bar Mitzvah, SAJ is a place of safety and kindness where we question the world and grow as a community. There are many who believe that synagogues are soon to be an ancient relic and that the model is essentially broken. As someone who grew up in a synagogue that I found irrelevant and problematic in many ways, and happily left after my non-egalitarian coming of age ceremony, I'm not going to be a champion for the model of synagogues as a model. But I have always and will always defend and champion Jewish spiritual communities, whether in the form of a synagogue, or Havara, a startup minyan online community. Doesn't matter the form, but communities that speak to the heart of what is happening in people's lives and in the world, a community that lifts people up and enables us and enables them, like Moses, to go from feeling very alone and overwhelmed to finding their way to meet the challenges they face. We can hear in the words that I shared a moment ago, and God willing, also in your own experiences, that SAJ is one of those communities. And in this time of continued isolation and threats of despair, just constantly knocking on the door, the work of our community has never been so needed or as important as it is today. Now, I don't want to paint a fully rose-colored picture. SAJ is not perfect. I am certainly not perfect. And we're always going to be a work in progress. And we are facing an exciting time, but also an unnerving time as we try to figure out what life will look like in this moving past or learning to live with COVID world. And I know that I have more questions than answers at this particular moment, including how will the habits that have changed over the pandemic impact SAJ? As we build more on-roads to community, what will bind us together? What are the structures that we need to create to make the most impact in our city and our world? How do we adequately meet the needs of such a diverse community, especially with people who don't know the basic Torah stories, and also people who have tremendous Jewish backgrounds and everything in between? How, as a congregation, can we better engage with Israel? And how do we reintegrate the people that didn't connect online over the last 2.5 years? When I came to SAJ, we began working on building from the wonderful foundation that had been laid before me and growing from there. It has been a labor of love and worth every second. And now in this moment, we are certainly going to face challenges. And we're going to need to summon courage, creativity, and open-mindedness as we begin to rebuild. And we're going to need a measure of trust and patience alongside a lot of hard work. But it will be worth it, because what we do matters. And the more we stand firm in the belief that our community is an answer to the challenges of our society, the stronger we will be. Each of us has stood in Moses' sandals and said, Lo uchal anochi, I can't do it. It is my hope and prayer that we can look and see the 70 elders in the faces of our community, the faces of the people we see at Kiddush, the faces of the people we see on Zoom, the faces of those we deliver meals to, and so on. And in doing so, we remember that we don't have to feel so alone and apart, but instead feel fully heard, seen, and embraced. And like Moses and the 70 elders, we share the burdens of life and the burdens of the world. And we pick each other up and we keep marching towards the promised land, all the while knowing that even if we do not get there, some future generation will. May the work of our hands be blessed. May the work of our hands be blessed.